Hello, happy Tuesday. Welcome to Summer Wonder Book Talks for Adults. Tonight we've got our favorite librarian at Cascade, except for me, of course, Nanette, who's going to tell us all about her picks, something she's been reading lately that she's loved. Nanette, what are you talking about tonight?
Tonight, first of all, I'm so glad to see all of you. Thank you so much for joining us. I want to remind you that we are live. So Penny's going to be monitoring comments. If you have any questions about anything that comes up or have questions about getting a hold of stuff, comment and Penny will be moderating those comments. We hope to hear from you. So I am going to talk about two awesome books, totally different from each other. The first one is called A Good Neighborhood, and it is by Therese Ann Fowler. I hadn't read anything by Therese Ann Fowler before, and I really enjoyed this. I decided to check it out because I saw it on the New York Times bestseller list, and I didn't know anything about it. So it's kind of, to me, I really enjoy picking up a book and having no idea what I'm getting myself into. Just knowing that it's well recommended is enough for me. So it happens to be set in North Carolina, in a suburb, and it takes place in the neighborhood of Oak Knoll. And actually, the neighborhood itself is the narrator of the story, which is kind of a really cool element. The narrator is like this omniscient we that comments in and out throughout the story, and kind of tells you at the beginning, almost you get this foreboding feeling of that something is afoot in the neighborhood. Valerie Holt is an ecology professor. She is an African-American woman raising her biracial son. She is a widow, and she lives in a modest home that she has loved from the time she set her eyes on the oak tree in the backyard, which was before her son was born. And at the beginning of the story, she gets some new neighbors. And the new neighbors are Brad and Julia Whitman. They tore down the modest home that was next door to Valerie Austin Holt, and they put up a McMansion with a pool. So Brad and Julia have two children. Their first child is Juniper, and she is actually Brad's stepdaughter. And and they have a daughter together named Lily. And yeah, the name Juniper is kind of a fun name, and actually Valerie Austin Holt loves that Julia has named her child after a berry on a tree. So that kind of, there's all these different kinds of little bridges built into the story like that. But Brad is a character. He is an internet, kind of like an internet sensation. He advertises for his HVAC company. So he's this local personality. He markets the company that he founded in sort of this kitschy way that has taken off. And so he considers himself proudly a personality. And Julia was raised Juniper as a single mother. She got pregnant when she was a teenager, and she grew up in a trailer park, and she was the victim of sexual violence as a teenager. And she's had this very, very different life than Brad had. I should tell you from the beginning that this book is told from the perspective of all of the different characters. So we get to hear their voices and their motives. And if you've heard me talk at all, you know that I love those shifting point of view stories. They tend to really help me understand the characters better. So the sort of the drama in the story comes when Valerie, the tree Valerie has a son. Did I mention that, Penny, that Valerie has a son?
No, what's his name? Do we know?
His name is Xavier, and he's 19, and he's a gifted classical guitarist. And he is heading off to college in the fall. So Valerie's going to live in an empty nest soon. And but she's got to get her son through his senior year in high school first. And the drama really starts to unfold when the beloved tree in Valerie Holt's backyard starts to die because of the construction of the pool. Now, Brad just sees this as a tree and doesn't understand why it's a big deal. But to Valerie, it's a character in her life. It ties her to both her son and her deceased husband. Now, Valerie's husband was a white male, and so her son Xavier is biracial, and that race is a critical part of not only the beginning of the book but the end. The book starts off when when Brad and Julia first move in, and they're at their poolside. They see Xavier, Valerie's son, working in his yard, and they mistake him for a landscape employee. So there's this very awkward moment at the beginning of the book where it's clear that that the son had been stereotyped, and so Brad's got to kind of overcome this awful, awkward, mistaken identity from the very beginning. And
so Brad's family is white.
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay.
And when when Valerie notices that her oak tree has decided to die, is beginning to die, excuse me, she decides that she is going to take legal action against not only Brad, but also the municipality, which agreed that the construction was allowable, but it was clear that they had violated some of the rules that were supposed to be in place to protect the natural surroundings. So she's set up to sue Brad and the municipality and the land developer for $500,000. Oh. So this raises the ire of Brad, who really loves himself. He loves his money. He believes himself to be a good man, raising good girls and having a good wife that he handpicked. And so in the shadow of this drama with the tree is a budding romance between Juniper, the 17-year-old daughter, and the biracial son, Xavier. So it really, in some ways, it really sets itself up almost like a Romeo and Juliet story. Mm-hmm. And because of the omniscient narrator, you have a sense that something really bad happened. But in all honesty, I did not predict how. I did predict some parts of the plot twist at the end, but not all of it. I knew something bad was going to happen, but I didn't know what it was. And sort of
no spoilers. No spoilers.
I am not going to spoil the story.
This sounds good. I want to read it.
It did make me teary. It's emotionally charged book. It has a lot of softer edges in the story because it's couched in this good neighborhood. And her love of trees is just kind of a special part of the book. And but there's also a lot of dichotomies in the book. There's the good versus evil. There's the class. There's race. There's stereotypes, and on both sides. There's the topic of religion, because the daughter Juniper has taken purity vows, and so there's all of kinds of like charged religious elements in it as well. And then there's the idea that power can influence things to happen, but power cannot undo things that happen. There are consequences to waging power, and so there's elements of regret, and it's a very, very good story, I think, for now, because it challenges us to look at our own perceptions of people, why we think what we think. And I think that it's particularly good for book clubs. My own book club, my personal book club, is reading it for next month. because I just think it has so many things to talk about, so many things to challenge each other about in a safe setting of a book club where and it talks about all the things you're not supposed to talk about. It talks about politics and religion and race and class and stereotypes and good versus evil and first impressions. So I really enjoyed it. I do have to say that it is written by a white woman. Teresa Ann Fowler is a white woman, and she, in the introduction to the book, she addresses that. She says, I know that I am a white woman. I am writing from the perspective of a Black teenage boy. I am writing from the perspective of a Black mother. And I'm writing from the perspective of a wealthy white male. I understand these things, and this is what I was trying to do. So she knows that that her limitations, and I think her attempts were honest and good. Some of the I like to read, whenever I read a good book that really moves me, I really enjoy reading the reviews around it. I like to hear what other people's impressions were. Like, did I really like this book? Was it really that good? Or was it only because I had 3 hours to myself and eating words was the best way I could use it, and therefore any words were good? So the reviews were somewhat mixed, but I think most people felt like it was a book that you couldn't put down. You wanted to find out what happened. You wanted to find out if good triumphed over evil. You wanted the good characters to succeed and the bad characters to realize what their faults were and what their shortcomings were. And I think that this book challenged them in some ways to do that. It definitely got me thinking, and was hard to put down. I ate it up like it was a piece of chocolate pie.
Now, were there characters that you liked? Were there good characters in both families?
There were some redemptive qualities at one point in Brad Whitman, when his wife was talking to him affectionately, talking about him affectionately, like.
What about Juniper? Did you like her?
Juniper, I did like Juniper. Yeah, and it was kind of interesting because because they grew up in the South, and but it was almost as if she just there was no race for her. She fell in love with the absolutely fabulous boy that a child that Xavier was, and he fell in love with the absolutely fabulous girl that she was, regardless of what Brad Whitman had intended for his daughter to be. And so I like that. Now, even Brad Whitman, when Julia's talking about how he tried to help her, like he really did love her for the person that he was in the beginning. He does have some absolutely detestable sides to him that grew even more detestable as the novel wore on. But
I love to hate Brad.
Yeah. So anyway, it's a good book to discuss, and I would recommend it. And that is a Good Neighborhood by Teresa Ann Fowler. Penny, did you find that could we find that electronically, or was it available or not?
I saw it as an audiobook, a book, and a book on CD on our catalog. Did you say that you actually had it in Overdrive, though?
Yeah, so I listened to it on Overdrive.
Excellent. So it's there as well.
Yeah.
And just as a reminder, we're open right now for curbside pickup. So if you're a sucker for the print, you can put that on hold and come to your local branch and pick it up. We'll put it right in your trunk for you. Or as Nanette said, it's available from Overdrive electronically.
All right. So the next book that I'd like to talk about is pretty much the exact opposite of A Good Neighborhood. It was only... It
was a bad neighborhood.
It is the story, it's called The Accident, and it's by Natalie Borelli. Now, my story about The Accident, how I came across it was, I think it might have popped up on my Goodreads, and so I got curious about it, and then I went to go look for it, and the only place at the time that it first came out that KDL had it was on Hoopla. which is interesting. They did not have it in print because I tried to talk about it at a Katie Ale event, and I didn't have a print copy to take for anyone to check out. I could only talk about the availability on Hoopla. So the accident is about a woman named Catherine. She had a child young and is a single mother. She was pursuing her degree in, I believe, like statistics and mathematics, and ended up dropping out of her PhD program to raise her child, and ended up becoming really, really good at being a venture capitalist. She is the secret weapon at the firm that she works at. And she's currently working on a deal relating to this product called the Sun Cell, which is like a cellular charged rechargeable battery. And she is hoping that if this goes through, that she will become a partner in the firm. Now, she is currently involved with one of the partners. She is having an extramarital with the Mark, who is one of the partners. So we know this about the story first starts. She also has a mother who is suffering from dementia and is in a nursing home. At the very beginning of the story, she gets a phone call from the nursing home saying that her mother has had an incident. And when she goes to the nursing home, there's a volunteer caring for her mother. And the staff tell Kat that the volunteer saved her mother's life when she was choking during dinner.
Wow.
So Kat rushes over and introduces herself to Eve. And Eve is the other main character in our story. Eve is a character you will never forget. She weasels her way into Kat's life. After the encounter at the nursing home, Kat wants to treat Eve and say thank you for saving her mother's life by taking her to lunch. And at that luncheon, it's revealed that Eve is kind of like living between apartments, and she is currently unemployed. And Kat, who has the power to hire somebody at the firm that she works at, said, I need an administrative assistant. I need you. You'd be great. If you know how to type, you're hired. So Eve shows up to work the next day, and things are good. Things go really well. The firm takes her in, and she performs pretty well. And so Eve wants to thank Kat by taking her out. So they go out for a really nice dinner. And Kat is tired from a long week at work. She's got a really responsible job, and she's tired. This daughter needs to care for, but against her better judgment, she decides that she's going to go to dinner with Eve. And against her better judgment, she decides that she's going to go dancing with Eve. And against her better judgment, she drinks too much with Eve, and she smokes too much with Eve, and she decides to drive home. Now, Eve is kind of goading her on along the whole time. They're dancing, they're having fun. And then they are cutting through a parkway, and they hit somebody. Kat hit somebody. Eve is in the car. They're both shaken up and injured, and Eve gets out of the car right away and discovers that they hit what appears to be a homeless person. And Eve encourages Kat to drive away, and they decide that is the best course of action, to leave the person in the street and to drive away. And Kat convinces herself that even though it didn't look like he was okay, that maybe he was okay. And so she goes home and she sleeps off this disaster of a night, and wakes up the next morning to her alarm going off at noon and realizing that she missed this important meeting. So she rushes into work, and there is Eve. And Eve is doing it kind of appears like she is trying to help out Kat by doing some work on her presentation that was quite important. And she does swimmingly well. Meanwhile, Kat is just terrified. She doesn't know how Eve can even function, not because of a hangover, but also because of this trauma that they both went through. They were both in a car accident, and they both presumably were, had the same levels of guilt and frustration and anger and frightened feelings relating to the death of this person. But Eve just marches right up and just does a great job, impresses Mark, the manager of this firm. And so the plot gets thicker and thicker. After that, they kind of are colluding together. Like Eve confesses that she's got an uncle on the police force, her Uncle Bill. And Uncle Bill knows that there's an accident. And Eve shows her how that this man really did die by showing her an internet copy of the newspaper article of this homeless person dying. And so all of this evidence and is really terrifying Kat. And so Kat is trying to ask Eve what's going on. And then it's obvious that Eve is becoming more and more strange and is trying to figure out why she is rattled. And then when Eve comes to visit Kat at her home when her friends are there, she whispers into her ear, "Well, I'm not the person that killed somebody." And so then it sets up this thing that Kat is the guilty person. Eve is the person that knows that she did this awful thing and is completely and it is obvious that Eve is going to double cross and blackmail and extort Kat. And Kat deteriorates. Everything around her deteriorates. Her relationship with her daughter. Eve ends up becoming more and more prominent in her life because she's manipulating all of these situations to favor herself over Kat. And Kat's appearance deteriorates, her health deteriorates, her relationships with her paramour and her relationship with her daughter, and her relationship with her friends all deteriorate around her. And so the question is, how is she going to get out from under evil Eve? And that is what we want to find out.
So it is all about Eve.
It is all about Eve, Penny. And it gets really good. And there was a plot twist that I did not see. Now, I know there are a lot of people out there that like book club reads, and I know there are a lot of people out there that like a good psychological thriller on the beach in the summertime. And this one is for you. After I read The Accident by Natalie Borelli, I went and checked out her other thrillers because I just could not put this book down. And, sometimes you just need a book that you can read in a few hours that's gripping, that keeps you on the edge of your seat, and that makes you very thankful that you're a librarian at KDL. And this was one of those books.
And one of our friends who joins us at KDL, our KDL programs that we had pre-COVID at Thornapple Brewing and at Osgood's, loved these kind of page turners that you couldn't put down that were so frightening. We'll say hi to her right now. And Nanette, tell us a little bit about the KDLs that we used to do.
So KDL is a program that before COVID was an in-person book discussion that a librarian from Cascade and a librarian Granville, we would come up once a month. They would come to Thornapple Brewing and we would talk on a Monday night. And then on the following Thursday, we would talk in Granville at a brewing company or Osgood's, and we would belly up with a beverage of our choice, and we would talk about our favorite books. We'd take books there to that we were recommending to check out, and sometimes people would take them if they sounded good, and sometimes they wouldn't. And oftentimes, more often than not, they also gave us recommendations. And I can't tell you, Penny, I know you have I have gotten some of my best books that I've ever read have been recommendations from all of you out there. So we love to hear what you are reading. And now that we can't meet in person at breweries, we hope that someday we will be able to. But right now we're doing our Katie Ale meetings in a Zoom format. And currently we are doing it with the people that used to attend in person. But if you're ever interested in joining us for one of those Zoom conversations where we talk about books like this, a little bit about the plot, how we felt about them, sometimes we talk about DVDs, then we would love to hear from you. You can reach out to us. You can call Patron Services and you can get information on how to get in on those Zoom calls. We are looking to get more and more people to talk about books because you got great recommendations.
Yes, we want to hear from you too, not just each other. So, but come back and listen to us again next Tuesday. We're here every Tuesday this summer of Wonder at 6:30. So hopefully come back next week. It'll be myself and my hubby talking about our favorite books that we've been reading lately. And also check us out tomorrow night, Wednesday at 6:30 for Summer Wonder Wednesdays, Swords and Bayonets at the Battle of Gettysburg. We've got historian Jerry Berg of the Swordsmanship Museum and Academy coming to talk to you about the deadly melee. So if you're into the Civil War, this is your thing. Tomorrow night at 6:30. Otherwise, we'll see you right here at 6:30 on Tuesdays. Myself, Nanette, and Sarah all summer long telling you about some great books.
Thanks for joining us tonight, everybody.
Have a good night.